some of you or been in meetings regarding some of the projects and different works that are going on along San Vicente. What we wanted to do is just bring in some of the departments, kind of get a brief update and kind of get us all in the same room. And then so that we can come back again at the start of the new year on kind of next steps and where we are. So this meeting is kind of to bring us all together, get some basic stuff out in terms of where some of these projects stand in correlation to each other, to kind of end the year, and then so that we can start again next year with kind of more action items. This is kind of the first of like 3 meetings we're looking at specifically having on this as we kick off kind of this next phase of this overall project. But just want to thank you all for being here. Just wanted to give everyone just a brief kind of update on what this meeting we hope to accomplish. We don't want to take up too much of everybody's time because we know we're leading into Thanksgiving. So thank you all for jumping on. And with that, I will hand it over to the councilwoman. Actually, I'll hand it over to the councilwoman and then we'll introduce our departments. Actually, let me introduce our departments real quick. I apologize, Councilwoman. That way people can put faces to some of the things you'll cover. We have with us Rudy. Want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Juan. Rudy Guevara. I'm the Western District engineer for Western District for LADOT in West LA. Been in the job for about 11 years. That's about it.
Thank you, Rudy. He's with DOT. And Jaime?
Good evening. My name is Jaime Munoz. I'm a civil engineer with the Bureau of Street Services, also known as Streets LA, and I'm the project manager for the Brentwood Walkability.
Thank you, sir. And Alexander, anyone from your team you want to introduce or say hi to?
Yeah, sure. I'll introduce myself and I'll pass it to the rest of the team. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Alexander Cayozo. I'm the senior landscape architect here at the Bureau of Street Services. Jaime and I work together under the design build group. My role with the Bureau is overseeing and project managing mostly landscape architecture related projects and streetscape and plaza projects throughout the city, and specifically working very closely with CD11. So nice to meet you all. And with us on my team is Jennifer Torres and Zach. I think we want to maybe pass it to Jennifer.
Everyone, my name is Jennifer Torres. I'm a landscape architect. I work in Streets LA Design Build Division with Alexander and Jaime. I am the project manager for the San Vicente Median Greening Project, and I'll pass it off to my team member, Zach.
Well, my name is Zach Katz. I'm the landscape architect associate with Streets LA under Alexander and Jennifer, and I am the lead designer for the San Vicente Median Greening Project.
Thank you, Zach. I think that is everyone on Alexander's team. Zahad, do you want to introduce yourself? I see you right there, sir, and it was nice seeing you earlier, but I'll let you introduce yourself.
Likewise, thank you. And with Alexander and team, my name is Saha Gidalian. I'm from the Bureau of Street Services. I'm part of our external relations team, where I work on transportation and infrastructure-related programs, projects, and policies. Thank you for bringing us together, Juan and team.
Thanks, everybody. And if I missed anybody, please feel free to chime in once we come back around. But with that, Councilwoman, I will kick it off to you. And I think Michael will have some visuals to go along with your presentation. And then we'll just kick it back to some of our departments to just kind of provide us some general updates right now. Councilwoman?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Juan. Juan, as you all know, is our district director here in Council District 11. Juan and your field deputy for Brentwood, Michael Amster, are our folks on the ground in the community every day who work with our city departments and our neighborhoods on a lot of different kinds of projects and city improvements. I'm really excited to see so many people joining us this evening to talk about San Vicente and to get a briefing on a couple of 3 different projects that the city is currently looking at that are in the pipeline. I see a lot of familiar faces here this evening, but also some folks that I haven't had an opportunity to meet before. So welcome. We're really excited to have everyone. And I also really just want to say thank you to our city departments and our staff who are all here with us this evening. I know that we're headed into Thanksgiving, which is obviously the busiest time of year. So we appreciate them being with us this evening tonight. So we all know that we are here tonight to talk about San Vicente Boulevard and its future. And, you know, while there are a number of aspects that we really should and could and would like to be able to look into on and along San Vicente Boulevard, tonight we're going to talk about 3 specific projects that have been in the works now for some time. The state of San Vicente Boulevard is something that has been a top focus and priority for the office, especially given its really multifaceted importance to the Brentwood community. This year, my staff, excuse me, has been really actively engaging with our city departments. They have walked San Vicente Boulevard with our city partners. We've also had the opportunity to do that now with some local Brentwood constituents. And now I'm really, this is one of a series of meetings that we're going to be having with the community to get additional input. These are important projects. They are things that will impact what everyday life looks and feels like in Brentwood. And so it's really important for all of us that we get this right. So I actually just want to set us up with a little bit of basic history about San Vicente Boulevard, because I think it really sort of sets the stage for where we are and what we're talking about. So the presentation tonight is going to cover a couple of things, the history of the boulevard, and then I'm going to pass this off to the departments to give the updates on each of the 3 projects that we're going to talk about. So the origins of San Vicente Boulevard actually stem from, and it got its name from, a Mexican land grant. And that was part of the growth of the Pacific Electric Westgate line. Brentwood actually used to be called Westgate before it was known as Brentwood. Back in the early 20th century, San Vicente was built with trolley tracks down the middle, and then the automobile lanes were to the side of the median. Originally, developers sought to extend it all the way to downtown Los Angeles, but as we know, that of course didn't happen. And what we have instead are 2 separate San Vicentes that have actually never been joined together. So in the decades after San Vicente Boulevard was originally built, the community character beside it and around it changed as well. There was a lot more commercial presence there than before. The boulevard itself changed as well. In 1949, the trolley tracks were removed and the median was replaced with the beloved coral trees that Brentwood is now so picturesquely and famously known for. Since that time, of course, the Brentwood community has really continued to grow, and San Vicente, the corridor, is now home to the Country Club, Brentwood Science Magnet, and a whole lot of local businesses that have a lot of history in the community. San Vicente, of course, as you all know, also borders the West LA VA campus. Really, today, San Vicente is central to life in Brentwood. And I really think that if we can do some improvements that make San Vicente better, we are actually making improvements that overall make Brentwood better. And so that brings us to why we are here tonight. There are a number of public improvements that we're in need of. And so my team and I have been working very closely with the departments of Public Works and Transportation on some things that could be done to enhance San Vicente overall. So tonight we want to share where we currently stand on these. And I want to go over the quick agenda and give a little bit of background on each of the projects. First of all, Public Works is going to cover its walkability project. This actually secured County Measure M funding earlier this year. And this is intended to improve the walkability experience on and around San Vicente. As a lot of you know, some of the intersections are nearly impossible to cross in a one light signal. A lot of the areas do not meet ADA standards. And so this project would address some of those most problematic issues. Second, we're going to ask Public Works to talk to you about their landscaping and irrigation project. Back in 2022, Senator Allen was able to help secure $1 million to help improve the median landscaping. And so my staff has worked with Senator Allen since taking office to finalize securing those funds. Getting those irrigation and landscaping improvements done is something that has a lot of promise for the community, just in terms of enhancing the median itself. And then finally, I'm going to ask the Department of Transportation to brief us on work that they have been doing around some potential left turn pockets at San Vicente and Darlington. Last year in the city budget, I was able to secure us funding for an assessment of traffic flow in the area. But this is something that the community has been advocating for many, many years now. And so I'm hopeful that we'll have the opportunity to work with our city departments to make it happen. We are going to have some challenges and some potential issues with that, and I'll let the departments talk about what some of those are. And we're going to have to make a decision as a community about what you think the best pathways are. And so before I turn it over to the department, we'll take some Q&As. I'm here to answer where appropriate, although I will defer most of the technical things to staff, who are the subject matter experts on this. But I am here to listen, to hear your feedback, to understand your priorities. And I will look forward to this continued conversation as we work with Brentwood to make San Vicente a really awesome place to walk, to work, and to visit for Brentwood. So thanks again for being with us tonight.
Great, thank you, Councilwoman. Mike, which of our departments do we have next? Hold on, let me pull up our agenda. Oh. Sorry.
We will be beginning with the walkability project led by Jaime Munoz.
Jaime, I will kick it over to you, sir, to provide some of the updates. Well, not so much updates, just to provide information on where we stand on some of this. As mentioned, some of you may have already seen some of this information. A lot of it may be you may have already seen it, but we did want to, again, bring all our departments together for one meeting to kind of have everyone in the same room, have this discussion, so that we all can kind of take our notes and be ready for early next year in terms of next steps and feasibility on some of these items. Jaime?
All right, thank you, Juan. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jaime Munoz, and I'm the civil engineer and project manager for this project. The Westside City Councils of Governments and CD11 have worked together to bring these improvements to fruition. My team at Streets LA and our partners at LA DOT and Bureau of Street Lighting will be teaming up for this project. Earlier this year, in May 2024, we worked with our partners at LA Metro to execute the funding agreement of $2.5 million for the design and construction of these improvements. All the work will be designed and constructed with city staff. The work will take place at the intersection of San Vicente and Gorham. The improvements consist of pedestrian safety improvements, upgrading the whole intersection, including the medians, to comply with the current ADA requirements. The intent of this project is to remove all barriers and improve pedestrian access. We are currently in the design phase and hope to be in construction in the summer of 2025. Next slide. On this slide, we are showing the improvements to be done at the intersections. We will have 12 new accessible ramps, one on each leg of the crosswalk. This will facilitate access and improve pedestrian circulation from one side of the intersection to the other. The driveway at the shopping center for the new Balance store will be relocated from Gorham to San Vicente. This will remove the pedestrian vehicle conflict where people were using the existing driveway as a ramp. As part of our improvements, we will be upgrading the signal to comply with ADA requirements. All push buttons will be at arm distance along the pedestrian walkways. Where possible, we will be reducing the crosslinks for the crosswalks. These improvements will not affect existing traffic or bike lanes. Next slide. The picture on the left is the existing conditions where the driveway and the crosswalk meet, creating an unsafe situation for pedestrians. The picture on the right is our proposed improvements showing a new ramp with a curb extension at the location of the existing driveway. This will create a safer, accessible pedestrian crossing. The new driveway will be shifted on San Vicente. Next slide. The picture on the left shows the current typical situation at this intersection. There's no compliant curb ramps and the push button is non-accessible from the path of travel for pedestrian. The picture on the right shows the proposed ADA compliant curb cut and a push button within arm's reach. That's it. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Jaime. And everyone, I hope you're taking your notes. I'd like to get through the departments on their presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions right after on that end. That way we can get through it and then kind of collectively have everyone speak, and we can all continue to kind of deliberate on some of your questions and issues. Next, we'll have our walkability team, if they can. Actually, that was our walkability team. Alexander and your team, in terms of any of the beautification and kind of where that stands, and just a brief update. Is that you or someone else on your team?
That would be from Jennifer and Zach.
Sorry, but thank you, sir.
That would be from Jennifer and Zach. Yeah.
Yes, hi everyone. Yes, so as the councilwoman stated, the San Vicente Median Greening Project is a turf replacement project that's going to enhance the landscape medians along San Vicente Boulevard. The potential limits of this project go from Montana over to Brigham. The project will enhance the medians by providing water use savings in terms of replacing the high water using turf with drought tolerant planting and low water use irrigation in the form of drip irrigation. We're currently working on preparing the state application and gathering the documentation that is required. Once we get the application filed and approved, we will then move into pre-design. And that's pretty much it on our part for now. Juan, you're on mute.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that brief update on that. And before I move to Rudy to give us some DOT quick updates on that end, as you all can see, a lot of these projects are happening at the same time. Rudy will provide some updates on that left turn signal and kind of what that's been looking like and those conversations have been, because some of we will have to start making some decisions early next year as to how we can proceed, because this part of the conversation with Rudy's team and what that looks like is going to have an impact on walkability and Jennifer's team and their beautification. So again, back to kind of why we're here today, kind of bring everybody back together. Here's where all the departments are. Here are all the discussions that are happening. We definitely wanted the community to be engaged and have kind of all of us together and get this information again, so that we can all kind of digest it again and then come back with some recommendations and kind of see what is going to be feasible as we move forward. So with that, Rudy, I will hand it over to you, sir, to provide us some information and updates on the on Darlington and some of the stuff going on there.
Yes, thank you, Juan. Michael, if you could present the first geo plan, one that's showing the regular striping as we have it today. Okay, so I wanted to give you some background on this traffic signal. The Darlington San Vicente traffic signal was built in 2011. I came to the Western District around 2012, maybe beginning of 2011. The information I received about the new signal was the community was presented with different options for the new signal. One option was to have left-turn packets that we have to cut into the median, and another option was what we have today, which is like 2 lanes in each direction, east and west, and no left-turn packets. And what I was told back then from the people that used to work in my office is that the community did not want to cut into the medians because of the trees. So DOT was forced to build the traffic signal without the left-turn packets. By the time I got here in 2012, I was already hearing complaints from the community that we did not have left-turn packets. And so we meet regularly with Brentwood community traffic committees, and this is an item that we discussed every year. And so we've been working with Michael and CD11 and developing a new concept for the striping. If, Michael, you want to show the new striping? Okay, so this is the concept plan that we came out with recently this year. It shows left-turn packets about 100 feet left-turn packets on each side. Wood has to cut into the median about 160 feet on each side. And so that might be difficult with some of the trees. We also need to have some civil work, which DOT doesn't do, so we need help from Streets LA and BOE to do the civil work. But that's what we have right now. So we have to make a decision in the future whether we're going to continue, because it's a question about funding as well. CD11 secured some funding, but because of the ADA guidelines, we have to come out with new ADA ramps, kind of like what you saw at San Vicente and Gorham. And every ramp is very expensive. Any civil works is really expensive as well. So, like Juan said, we'll have to make some decisions for next year.
Thank you, Rudy. And on that, are there recent traffic study counts here that the department has done or we could do before our next meeting on that end? How's that looking? When did you say the last kind of check was done?
I think it was a few years ago. Because the concepts have been pretty much driven by the complaints from the community. We did a collision report. The collision report doesn't show collisions with the left turns at this time, or at least no collisions that are reported to LAPD. We have to do maybe another manual count to see how many. Oh no, we did do a manual count recently, and so this is somewhat significant drivers turning left.
Great, thank you, Rudy. With that, I want to go to some community questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions that will come up on this end. Like I said, right, all right, let me just go that route right now. I see, Lauren, you have your hand up?
Yeah, hi, Lauren Cole, South Brentwood Residents Association. First of all, I wanted to thank you guys for organizing this. This is extremely helpful to get the word out in the community on what's going on San Vicente, as you guys know, and way before your office or before this particular council office was around, we've been working on it. And I wanted to clarify a little bit since we, several of us on the call, and unfortunately Nancy Friedman, who's been working with the coral trees for about 20 years, isn't on the call, probably 20, 30 years. As far as Darlington and San Vicente, just to clarify, that traffic light went in 2011 without a lot of community input. And it's not correct that the community as a whole did not want the median cut into. There were a very small handful of people who did not believe that the historic cultural monument status of coral trees allowed to cut into the median. I think that's been kind of disproven or set aside over the years. We have basically been trying since it went in 2011 to put the left turn pockets in. I know that Nancy has been working for many years to make sure that the median is clear of any trees that are in the way. As trees have died, she has not planted them right at the turn pockets. So we want to make sure that this keeps moving forward. It's a little disappointing that 15 years later, I was at 15 if I'm doing my math right, we're still working on this and would very much appreciate anything we can do to continue to get those left turn pockets in. Because again, the community has at various times when Mike Bonden's office, we worked very closely with them. We're happy to both at South Brentwood Residents Association and Brentwood Community Council to take any kind of resolutions that you want to kind of make sure that you're aware that there is community support for these left turns. We appreciate the time that you're spending on them. We just would love to get them in because it's been so many years.
Thank you, Lauren. And Mike, Mike's taking notes on some of these, and it's always helpful to hear from you all directly as a group and individually. Send emails, thoughts. There's no right answers or wrong ones to Michael and I. The councilwoman will see and read most, if not all, as we again make assessments as to what we need to do to, get something moving forward. As you alluded to, Lauren, this is a long time in the making, and we're trying to make sure we do something right and get something done right. Thelma, you're next on my squares of things, and then I see Thelma, I'll go to you, and then I see two more. Terry Con, you're 2, and then I have Zoom user with a nice striped shirt. You're my 3, and then Bill, I got you 4.
Thanks. That's Nancy Friedman, who's the Zoom user. So
all right,
glad
hi,
you're here,
Nancy.
Nancy.
I was let out of jail so I could come talk
Okay,
to
great.
you.
That's why you're in the stripes. Okay.
Yeah.
Really, thanks Juan for doing this, and thank you all for the city for showing up the Tuesday before Thanksgiving to do this. So I have a quick question for Jennifer. I think our community and a lot of hands are raised because we're all concerned about coral trees and the viability of those coral trees. And we don't have irrigation, and that's why it looks terrible, the grass. So are you saying that you're going to take out all the grass and put in drought tolerant plants? And so there will be no turf? Or I don't quite understand exactly what the beautification is going to look like. And if you could give us a little more detail, that I would appreciate it.
Yes. So basically there's an ordinance called MWELO that says that any beautification that you do, you can only replace so much turf back into an existing landscape that uses turf. This went into effect, I think it's like in 2010 or 2009, something like that. There's a very small amount of turf that's allowed. And generally, turf replacement programs, we just don't include any turf anymore. So in any situation where you're redoing the landscape, this AB 1881 or MWELO gets triggered. So in the city, what we would do is we would replace all of the turf. We would replace all of the existing irrigation system that's there, which I think in some of these medians, it's already been turned off for a while. And what we would do is we would go back and replace it with low using shrubs and irrigation. So in this case, we would work with a palette that would be complementary to the existing protected coral trees out there. But for sure, we would use a drip system of some sort, or if we were to use overhead spray irrigation, also would be like a more efficient one than what's out there. We haven't gotten quite that far into deciding like specifics about like the type of planting and the type of irrigation that we're using. As I mentioned earlier, we're still working on gathering all the documentation that's required for the state application so that we can file it with them. Once we are able to do all of that, we can move into pre-design and do more studies, like feasibility studies that will give us a better idea as to what we can do in the space with the funds that we have, right? So we want to beautify this. We want to do the best job that we can to make this look as attractive as possible, but we do have a budget that we have to abide by. So a lot of our design will unfortunately be driven by those dollar figures, right?
Okay, and then a quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
Once you actually do the feasibility and you have a palette or choices to make, will the community have any input in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
one of the things that we need to do is first and foremost, before we even start doing our, or part of our feasibility study is, as was mentioned before, there was a rail here before. So a big item that we have to work on is doing soil testing. Soil testing can be quite expensive and it can be quite lengthy, and it will also dictate how we spend the money. If for some reason, which I'm hoping we don't have, but if for some reason we have contaminated soil at any of these locations, that's going to be a big factor in not just not so much design, but in terms of like the actual execution of the work. It'll be a lot more costly if the soil is contaminated because now we need to take different precautions in order to protect the employees that are going to be performing the work. So that's going to be one of the first things we do once we do get the application approved and we do start going into pre-design. Once we do that, we'll be able to start working on gathering, some plant palettes that we could present to the community and, start getting some input from everyone. But we're still quite a bit away from there.
Okay, great. Thanks. And I'll turn it over to Terry now.
And I wanted to just add one. Hi, guys. Again, sorry to interrupt. I wanted to add one thing about soil and all that. I don't want to raise any red flags. This is kind of a typical thing that we do on sites when we know that there was old rail, right? Like San Vicente has a really interesting history of rail, right? That ran along San Vicente Boulevard. So whenever we know that there was rail, we always go into test to make sure there's no little bits of any sort of old railroad ties or anything like that that may be not healthy for plants to continue to grow in and something that we don't want to start digging up and disturbing. So we do that on every project that we know there was an old rail line. So I just wanted to flag that. There's not some emergency. There's no major concerns about anything out there right now. It's just like a normal protocol that we do when we're working within a site where there was railroad before.
Thank you, Alexander, and thank you, Thelma. And just to kind of piggyback a little bit off of that, I've worked with Alexander for many years on many projects, and their team is great at working with the community and finding that balance. So once we start getting to some of those points, and I think that's why we wanted to bring everyone together today to let everyone know here are kind of where all these stand. There's definitely going to be a more room to expand that conversation with the community as to what that looks like. So thank you again, Alexander, and your team for your continued partnership. As I've mentioned, me and him go back a couple years, even before I came over here with Councilwoman Park. So it's a pleasure to work with him and his team. Tarika, I'm sorry.
Terry Khan.
Terry Khan, I'm so sorry. I'm bad with names. Thank you. You're muted. And then Nancy, Bill, that's the order.
I'm,
Okay, there I am. Okay, listen, Nancy, do you want to go first?
no, I don't care.
Okay, I'll go and then you could fill in where I'm, you know, what I missed. Nancy recruited me to work on the coral trees and other environmental issues back in 2011. She and I have had many conversations with many different people. If there's going to be any kind of progress, I think you're going to really want our input. And I don't want to, I have such a plethora of information. I don't want to bother everybody with this. But let me just say, you don't just have problems with possible soil contamination. You've got all your electrical lines and everything else running down the San Vicente median. It takes a turn to the south at Gorham, okay? But so that's problematic. Another problem is in the last, I don't know, I'd say 7 years, the gophers have started to take over the medians from an east to west direction. They've now crossed over Bundy and are continuing westward. But if you just take a walk on San Vicente, you'll see that it's much worse as you get closer to the VA. It's a real problem because what Nancy and I have been doing over the years is we've been replacing coral trees with baby coral trees. And, you know, they just eat at the roots, the gophers do. So then we've had to go back and put netting around the base so that A, nobody could trip over it. This is all underground, but B, the gophers can't get in there. I mean, it's really been a cascading effect of problems with the coral trees. We had several years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, decided to buy 15 coral trees. You can't buy them anymore because they're not good trees to plant in public areas. They're considered to be ornamental trees. They're not natives. I mean, if we're really going to do this right, we've got to pivot away from the coral tree to like a California oak or something that's actually native and could withstand the drought conditions. And, you know, they also are buffeted by the toxins from all the cars. So we had to privately plant these 15 trees out at, Nancy will tell you the name. I can't even remember the name of the garden because they changed the name. Brightview. And we decided that we were going to plant these trees where we thought that they would have the most chance of success. So if you notice, there's 15 baby trees planted only west of Bundy. East of Bundy, they can't really withstand everything that's coming their way. That's just the coral trees. Now, the other thing that Nancy and I have been working on is to make this San Vicente median strip look like something other than just a bunch of dirt with trees on it. I'm sure you've all driven on San Vicente Boulevard in West Hollywood. They have a median strip that is much narrower than our median strip. Our median strip, if memory serves, is 37 feet wide in most places. Okay, it's huge. They have put in DG paths that go down the median. They have public art. There are benches. There are really beautiful design features. We could do that. There's no reason that our downtown has to look so banal. And Nancy actually we have a couple of different designs that people have created over the years, one of them by Nancy's son, which really incorporates elements of the fact that it was the red line. And it's clever, and I hope you guys will be open to looking at it. I love the idea that you're thinking about different solutions to the irrigation problem. Those trees are actually well over 60 years old, mature trees, and they have a lifespan just like you and I have a lifespan. They're going to just die out one after the next. We've been very fortunate to have somebody in our community who is like, she calls herself Queen Palm. Her name is Lisa Smith. She's arborist to the stars. And she's gone through these trees with us over and over again. And we grade them 1 through 4 over which one's going to drop dead next. So we know which tree is going to fall next, but we don't want to replace them. So if you're wondering why it looks so naked on San Vicente in the business district, is because we actually came to a decision that it was a waste of money and effort to put more coral trees there. We need to take a different turn. But let me get back to irrigation for a second. Most of you know Hector Benuelos. He used to be head of irrigation. This was a while ago. This is 15 years ago, and he's now the head of urban forestry. Okay, Hector told me years ago that the irrigation is so old under San Vicente that we couldn't do some of the things you're talking about. He didn't want to touch it. Now, I don't know, I can't speak for Hector, but if you guys could come up with new irrigation, that would just be dandy. I do have to caution you, people don't only cross San Vicente at the crosswalks, they cross in the middle. If you're going to have drip irrigation with hoses on the ground, you know, somebody could trip and fall, and I don't think anybody wants that. So I think that you want to look at a different solution to that problem. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, I've said too much already. Nancy, it's all yours.
Terry, real quick before we kick it over to Nancy, as always, thank you for the wealth of information and the clear presentation on it. And clearly, you are an important resource. Certainly, my team and I will continue to engage with you and on all of these issues, but I really encourage our city departments to view you as a partner and collaborator in this as well, because you have a lot of information that someone like me, brand new to this, I haven't been at the home with you for the last 15 years. So we really appreciate all of that.
You know, and I have to say, Nancy and I had a community meeting because we were encouraged to do that before we made any changes. And so we did this many years ago. I have my notes someplace in a storage bin, and I'm more than happy to help with this project.
Well, and we really want to get it right, and we're mindful of where we are in 2024 and the need to make some changes. And so we really welcome it. Thank you, Terry, as always. Thank you.
Love you, Tracy. Thank you.
Likewise.
And actually, do we mind? I'd like to address some of the questions before we move on. Do you guys mind if Streets LA just answers a couple of those questions really quickly?
I was gonna pivot to you before I went to Nancy, because I saw you and I was like, no.
Yeah, and I think hopefully this will help. I think Jennifer can answer a lot. Thank you for that. That was really helpful feedback. I think Jennifer can answer a lot of that. So Jennifer, you want to go ahead and I can infill anything that we may miss.
Yeah, so I'll start off by talking about the drip and irrigation, since that's what's fresh in my mind right now. So there are different types of drip irrigation, different ways that it can be installed. There is subsurface and there is on grade. The one that you were describing where people might trip, that's called on grade drip irrigation. We do not allow that in the city of Los Angeles due to what you just mentioned, it being a trip hazard. So our drip irrigation would be subsurface, which means that it would be buried below the grade 4 to 6 inches, I'm sorry. And so we don't anticipate that to be a problem. As far as the coral trees go, we unfortunately do not have any purview over a historic tree, and we cannot change that tree. What we can do is we can propose a different species of trees if there's any need to plant any additional trees in the median, but we cannot go out and, like, you know, say we can no longer plant coral trees since they are the historic preserved tree in the median. Let me see. I'm trying to think of what else was there, Alexander. I think I
believe there was a question.
We have to be a little careful about it. Just, you know, just going back to like proposing a different tree species, it would still have to be a tree species that would do well in the median. And, you know, unfortunately, I think because of the way that the historic preservation language or the planning language is written, we actually can't replace the tree, now that I think about it. So I misspoke earlier when I said we could propose a different tree. That would require changing the specific plan and the historic designation. So we're not allowed to change the coral tree.
That's, sorry.
Yeah, and I think this is probably a longer conversation and probably something that I would rather have planning discuss, because we've had some offline conversations with planning. So we can talk to them more about it, but the initial feedback we've received from planning is that because it's a designated coral corridor, they would want new coral trees to install, and they wouldn't want to start mixing and matching. But I think it's probably a longer, like I said, a longer conversation and maybe a separate conversation. I don't want to take up too much of all of your time today without that. Was there anything else, Terry, I'm sorry, Terry, yes, that we may have missed with answering your questions?
Let's see.
We talked about, and then we
Okay.
discussed plant palette. We talked about compatibility with the trees. We talked about irrigation systems. I also want to make sure too that we are very sensitive when we go in with existing trees, right? Like with the roots, with ensuring that those existing trees aren't cut off from that turf water that they've been so used to, right? Because I get it, right? You're gonna now strip all the turf out, and they're used to all that guzzling water on top, right? We don't now just put in a bunch of Palm Springs vibe landscape where you're gonna cut all the water. Like we definitely don't want to do that. We take into consideration of like, okay, hey, this tree was used to getting 10 gallons per hour or whatever it was used to, and we try to still ensure that the tree gets the same amount of water and it's still getting a good quality of care. And also the big thing too is we don't want to go in and start planting a bunch of stuff and chopping up roots, right, of some of these beautiful old trees, because the trees aren't going to want their roots cut. We're going to be very sensitive to that. We're in areas where we can't plant, we potentially will put mulch or other material. So that's all kind of the thought processes that we go through with the planting and sensitivities that we do take when we're working in existing spaces.
Thank you, Alexander. And I think the only other thing was the power lines and all that, but all that is part of your guys's.
Yeah, we have
Department
a multitude of steps we go through. We reach out to all the utility companies. We have our own internal electronic vault, like internal systems where we look it up, and then our last little thing at the end is we literally call 811, which is the folks who come out with the metal detectors. And so we have like 3 steps we do, and a lot of our work we do when we have known utilities, we do hand digging instead of heavy trenching. So we're taking extra care to not damage things. So all of that's taken into consideration. And when there's extra sensitive lines like fiber optic or things like that, we even have it marked out in the field with special flags so the crews know. So all of that's taken into consideration.
Thank you, Alexander. Nancy, you're next on our queue, and Bill, I got you right after, sir. And we should have enough time to hopefully get through everything. If not, I will try and hold on to our team just a little bit over. But Nancy and then Bill, and it looks like that was it. And that's why I let these conversations go a little longer. So if you might want to squeeze a question in, this is probably your last chance to raise your hand. But again, we will be back. Michael and I and the departments will be available to answer more questions as we work through this progress. But Nancy?
I just wanted to ask you, somebody early on said that the Ben Allen's plan was going to bring them, it was into Montana. Is that correct? I thought it was going to Darlington.
When we're talking about the Ben Allen project, you're referring to the funding that he secured for the median even irrigation project, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I have an answer for that. So it's dependent on, as we're continuing our feasibility studies, it's really going to be dependent on how much we could spread that money out.
Okay, all right. Well, let me help you out here. The coral trees, I don't think you understand. They're not growing them anymore. The nurseries have stopped growing them. The quality nurseries, the trees that Terry and I grew, we grew from seed for 4 years. And they are not doing them anymore because they don't grow well. And the city is no longer, they want to change the tree, the city tree, which is the coral tree, and they want to change it to an oak or whatever. So I would check it out, because if you plan on planting more trees, that is a very bad end to do it where all the gophers are coming from the VA. And
that's good information to know. Yeah, well, thank you for letting us know about that. We'll look into that.
Yeah, and as far as the, I'm the one that's like crazy about having this left-hand turn. And if a tree has to be moved in order to do it, it can be done. Brightview has been out. They said that it's a very healthy tree, that it can be done. The guy who planted the tree 8 years ago is the one that said, oh, I remember this tree, I planted it. So it is possible to do that. And then you've got your ability to do that corner, because all the rest of the trees have died. But I think you do need some information from over years, because this is not a piece of cake. And I'm also not sure that particular median is used a lot, and perhaps more into the middle of the business district, it would be a better shot. But Anyway, I think we do need a lot more conversation, and there's a lot more we could explain to you that, isn't obvious, just as you have information to tell us that isn't
Sure,
obvious.
yeah. And it'd be
Yeah.
helpful actually too for you to, if you could provide to the council office the Brightview information, that would be really helpful as well. The
Yeah.
Brightview, the tree folks. Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you, Nancy, on that. It's, again, we're glad to hear from everyone and Alexander and their team and everyone. We'll take everything in, and we're already working on some of those. And some of you offhand or in one way or another, we've discussed the issue with the kind of protected tree and all of that status, as Jennifer mentioned, and I think Alexander, that is its own different process. Yes, it is tied to what we're doing here for sure, but that is something we will look a little deeper into with some of those departments as to what that means, given what you just mentioned. It's not being planted anymore, it's not being grown, and some of these other issues. That is a conversation we'll have parallel on this, because it's important to have for sure, as well as the impact it'll have on the project here. And then, as you mentioned, you guys have, if you can share that information that Alexander said about moving that tree, it'll be helpful for us and the departments to have and look into some of that. And as we continue to explore and move forward with some of these things, that'll be helpful for us to have kind of in our back pocket as well. Bill, I know you've been waiting, sir, and I'm sorry you just drew the short straw on this one, but here you are. You got the last one. I didn't see anyone else raise their hand, so take it away, sir.
Hi, am I unmuted? Can you hear me? So thanks everybody for the meeting, really helpful. I'm a retired architect. I have a background in finance. I've worked in small firms. I was a VP of design for one of the major studios. I commend you for trying to corral this, start the conversation. I really commend Nancy and Terry for your efforts on the trees. I have two quick questions and then maybe two observations. Brentwood, that's the center of our community there. People drive up and down, we coming to our homes, people visiting us. It just looks awful with the dead grass. So in hearing the presentation, the two clarifications, what for the professionals involved, what sort of time frame, broad brush are you thinking about? This feels to me like it's going to be a 5-year project, that it's going to look the way it looks for 5 years, if not more, between design and testing and all that. So broad brush, what do you sense is the time frame community can assume, hey, this might look beautiful again in 5 years, 8 years? What's the time frame? I heard some mention of the scope being from Brigham to Montana. I would think it should be Brigham to at least Bundy. That's our central commercial corridor, and if not further. But
there's no Bundy.
If you can clarify that. And then two comments. I wonder if it's going to take a long time, if there might be any thought about some kind of interim solution, is just kill the dead grass and put some DG paths, even if it's not perfect, just to make it look a bit more manicured, a bit more tended to, like staging your house for sale. Could we do something that at least looks like we're paying a little attention to it? My final thought, having worked in big organizations, is sometimes getting people involved and getting people excited and letting the community know this isn't just a dead issue like our grass, is could we do a little section 20 feet, 40 feet of like a mock-up and say, hey, we know this is a problem. Here's something we're like, spend a little money and say like coming soon, we're thinking about doing something. So those are my two questions and my two comments. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Bill. A lot to unpack there. Alexander, you want to give us give it a shot on that end on some of those?
I could answer, and yeah, and Jennifer could infill too. Sure. So it really is dependent on kind of our next few months, right? So we're still with the timeline, right? So I wish we could come to you guys right now with like, oh, it's going to be 6 months, a year, 2 years, etc. It's really going to be dependent on we're getting this final funding figured out on, Jennifer's really been working hard on that. And then it's going to be dependent on what we find when we start doing our studies of the soil. That's going to dictate a lot. Because that's going to be either, does that add 6 months more if we have to do soil removal, et cetera. So we'll be able to answer that better more, I'd say, in the next few months as we kind of unravel this. We would be really hesitant to start doing any sort of like interim fixes. And I get it, like looking at it right now and all that, it's hard. But we don't want to start doing any interim fixes, for one, without knowing the quality and condition of the soil. We do not want to start disturbing anything out there. When turf was put in 30, 40 years ago and some of these trees were put in, like a lot of things were unknown. Now that we know, and now that Jennifer and I are involved in this project and we know that this was a former rail site, we have kind of a hard and fast rule that we do not touch any sites until we know the true condition of the soil. So unfortunately, no temporary solutions right now. So we're going to be leaving it as is, but we do want to continue talking to the community and keeping you guys updated. Like Juan said, he and I have worked together a long time. We really try to keep open communication with the community. Also, I think one big thing, which I really do like about our group, is the team that you're seeing here. We see the project through to the end. This isn't like, oh, we're just doing outreach and talking to the community. You'll see Zach and Jennifer and myself like out there during construction. You'll see us throughout the whole process. So we are the team, like for like all points of the project. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Is
I
the
know maybe
scope
that
is
may
the
not
scope
be
from is the scope from the VA to Whole Foods, or is it from the VA to Bundy and like Vicente Market?
Jennifer, remind me the initial kind of outline, and I know this may fluctuate depending on what happens with soils and things like that. What was the initial funding? At least the language, what was that earmarked for?
So potentially from from the VA, right, which is the Brigham, over to Montana. But it could change again depending on the soil testing, like what those results give us, and if there's any limitations with that.
Yeah, the soil testing.
It doesn't mean that it's set in stone yet.
Yeah, it basically that changes cost, right? So if we now have to start removing some soil, whether it's 12 inches or 18 inches or things like that, that starts to change. That starts to add cost for us. So instead of 2 medians or 3 medians, maybe it's 1 or 2. So that's going to fluctuate as we get to know more information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And as Alexander said, as soon as we get public information to share, we'll definitely push it out. And again, another plug for the councilwoman's email to sign up on that end. That is where we will be sharing the most up-to-date information. And as we get it on the ground, Michael and I and Alexander and the crews share information, we'll pass it along to the community. I do have Pamela and Lauren, you have about another 2 minutes if we can sneak in a quick question. I do want to respect everybody's time, and then Councilwoman, I'll kick it back to you to close us out. Pamela?
Just real quick before you go, Bill, I just want to say, I hear you about it, the way it looks currently. It's an eyesore, and I just want you to know you have great advocates in Michael and Juan in shepherding things along, and this is something that, I want to see through too. I know you all have waited a long time for improvements. We want to get it right. We want to get the right community impact so that it is the right thing for you. But I hear you. This has gone on long enough. It needs to be done. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, Bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Pamela Brown?
Yes, hi, thank you. Thank you all for your time. I asked a question in the Q&A thing, and Michael said I should ask it here. Seeing as how we have had coral trees thriving for decades in the median, does it make sense that we need to spend a lot of money on soils testing?
Yeah, it's not even necessarily about like, is the soil friable for plant growth? It's about once we start going in there and start tearing up turf and creating a bunch of dust and all that, it's about quality and health. So what we found in the past with old rail sites is there maybe is like a little bit of slight metal traces or some old petroleum that may have soaked into the ground. So it's really a health and safety thing more than a friability and will the plants survive. It's more of a, hey, we're gonna send in a crew of 10 men and women from Streets LA, and now we're gonna be tearing up this entire thing, creating a bunch of dust and all of that, which we of course try to control with hoses and all that, but still, the health and safety is important. That's kind of the first and foremost. So that's kind of the bigger thing, actually.
Okay, I mean, if they're going to cut in and do the left turn lane, you're cutting into it there. I mean, is there just another place that it can all be tested?
The entire San Vicente median was historically rail. So we are treating all of this as We are treating all of this as potentially something that we don't necessarily want to work in without knowing what's there. So that's the stand from Streets LA when it comes to doing heavy landscape work.
We'll let Rudy answer on DOT's side what they do in terms of testing when they do their work.
Yeah. I'm sorry, does that answer your question?
I mean, you're answering it, but I just feel like it's an expense when we have a limited budget.
I know.
That we're spending extra money.
I know.
You know, I mean, maybe you look back
part of
and
our protocol. We do that with all mediums, just also just to get recommendations on amendments that we do. But in this particular case, as Alexander mentioned, because we do know it's rail, we have to be responsible, and we can't oversee this, because God forbid that something happens and somebody does get sick, then that's our licenses on the line, and we can't responsibly design this knowing that there is.
And
is the concern that the rail still exists, or
it might be, and it's actually kind of a cool little artifact finding thing. In the past, we've found when we've had this proper remediation where we found railroad ties and bits and pieces and stuff. It's kind of interesting, right? What we found old stakes and bolts and things like that. And as Jennifer said, we're going through this right now on Lamert Boulevard, where there was old rail. We've had to do this at Caesar and Grand, where there's old rail. This is a typical protocol for Bureau of Street Services. I get it, because this has changed projects for us in the past too, but we've worked through this, and we know how to work through this. It just may change scope a little bit, but we're doing kind of the proper steps. I get it though.
Since you've done it in the past, do you have an idea of what the cost will be?
We don't know. So it really is dependent on, so say there's soil that's like, oh, we need to remove soil. Sometimes it's only 6 inches, sometimes it's 12, sometimes it's 18. So it's really going to be dependent on how much soil does need to be removed. Like I have projects where it's been,
the type of contaminant.
A range. So
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Alexander. And yes, having been in Echo Park with the old red line, there was a lot of that issues with rail that went across, and it is a necessary evil of sorts. And as Alexander said, it's mainly for the safety of employees that are working there, as well as, again, as Jennifer touched on, their licenses and the professionalism that comes with their jobs on that end. So thank you all for that.
I'm sorry, can I just real quick, Lauren Cole, add a little bit of background? It'll take me 30 seconds on the question that keeps coming up of why are we only looking at Gorham, or what's the scope?
Yes, Lauren, bring us home, and then Councilwoman, so we can give everyone the rest of their evening back. So go ahead, Lauren. Thank you.
So this project has actually been going on probably about 10 years. It actually was initiated by the community, and we worked very closely. We had a group in the community called the San Vicente Walkability Group, which still exists, and we still want to keep working with you guys. We worked with the then council office, Mike Bonin's office, and with the then LADOT group. We went intersection by intersection and came up with a full list of potential improvements. We went all the way, I believe, either Gretna Green or Bundy, all the way down to Darlington. We still have that presentation, and I realize, Juan, I owe it to you from our last meeting with LADOT. The reason that we're talking now about Gorham is that we've spent quite a few years, and again, predates his council office, to get funding. We worked with Bonin's office to apply for the Great Streets program in about 2018, 2019, and weren't one of the boulevards selected. So the reason right now we're talking about Gorham is when Measure M came up, there was Measure M money, and the discussion was, well, that should be enough to get one intersection. So we started with Gorham. And we started with easy things like ADA ADA improvements. And so that's why now we're talking about Gorham. There is actually, though, a vision to do a lot more with the other intersections. So just wanted to make sure everybody had that context, since it's obviously a newer group working on it.
Thank you, Lauren. And if you can share that, that'd be great. Again, all part of our assessments, if this needs to long-term, and again, not saying that it will or anything, but have to phase it out. Alexander and I have phased out many of projects given budgets and all of that. But I hear you. And thank you for that. If you can share that with all of us, Michael, myself, I know Alexander loves getting all this extra information as they work through theirs. It's always good to have the more information, the better on our end. And with that, I thank you, Lauren, and everybody. Councilwoman, do you want to sign us off unless one of our departments has anything else to add to it before I hand it over to the councilwoman? I want to thank you all again. Jaime, this was an easy meeting for you, as well as you, Rudy, and thank you. But again, if anyone has any questions, reach out to us. We can always connect you with the teams. Councilwoman?
So I just want to say that we really welcome the engagement and the input, and we look forward to leaning into our community partnerships to make sure that we deliver the best project that we can. Really, really grateful to our city partners and to my team for helping us see this across the finish line. I know it's a lot of years in the making, and so we're really excited to get to see it through. So as we head into the Thanksgiving holiday, I wish all of you a wonderful holiday weekend. My heart is full of gratitude, and I look forward to seeing everyone back, and we will continue this discussion as we do this work to deliver what I hope will be a great project that benefits the entire Brentwood community for generations to come. So thank you all for being here this evening, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And we.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye bye, everyone. Have a nice evening.